Gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to welcome all our distinguished guests, dignitaries, to Day 3 of India Space Congress 2026. Over the past 2 days, India Space Congress has brought together leaders, policymakers, innovators, industry representatives, researchers, international partners, and strategic thinkers to deliberate on the evolving global space landscape and the need to reinvent collaboration in space. Today, as we enter the third day, our focus moves to a theme that is central to the future of national capability, technological sovereignty, and global leadership, realizing the next era of space. Space is no longer only a domain of scientific exploration. It is no longer limited to satellites, launch vehicles, and missions. It has become a critical pillar of national security. Digital infrastructure, economic resilience, strategic communication, disaster response, navigation, surveillance, and defense preparedness. In today's world, space capabilities influence how nations communicate, how economies function, how militaries operate, how disasters are managed, and how borders are monitored, and how strategic decisions are made. As the space domains becomes more contested, congested, and competitive, the need for security, resilience, and strategic autonomy has become more urgent than ever before. Ladies and gentlemen, India has already demonstrated remarkable progress in space, science, launch capabilities, satellite application, lunar exploration, navigation, and commercial space activities. With policy reforms, the emergence of new institutions, increasing private sector participation, and a growing defense space interface, India is now entering a decisive phase in its space journey. And ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome you all to this very important opening ceremony. And to begin on an auspicious and a ceremonial note, we begin the proceedings with the ceremonial lamp lighting. And to do the honors, I would like to invite our dignitaries. I invite Dr. Subba Pavuluri, President SIA-India. I invite Lieutenant General D.S. Rana, PVSM Commander-in-Chief, Indian Army. I invite Mr. Vinayak Godse, CEO DSCI. I invite Mr. Arvinder Bahal, and I invite Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, retired, PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Deputy Chief IDS Operations, and also the Senior Advisor for SIA-India, and Mr.Anil Prakash, Director General SIA-India. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for that ceremonial inauguration of the opening ceremony of Day 3 of India Space Congress 2026. Thank you, dignitaries, and may I request for a group photograph in front of the lamp, please. Thank you. May I now request our esteemed dignitaries to kindly grace the stage with their august presence. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the morning session brings together distinguished leaders from in industry, cybersecurity, defense, strategic affairs, and the space ecosystem to reflect on the future of space security and strategic autonomy. I would now request Dr. Subba Pavuluri, President SIA-India, to kindly do the honors of welcoming and felicitating our esteemed dignitaries with a ceremonial shawl and a floral bouquet. First and foremost, it's an honor to welcome our very special guest, Lieutenant General D.S. Rana, PVSM, Commander-in-Chief, Indian Army. Warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Once again, a very warm welcome to you, sir. We welcome and honor Mr. Vinayak Godse, CEO, DSCI. Warm welcome to you, sir. We welcome and honor Mr. Arvinder Bahal, who is also a very well-known astronaut. We are honored to have you sharing the stage, sir. A very warm welcome to you. Thank you, sir. And to formally welcome all our distinguished dignitaries, all our distinguished guests to the Day 3 opening ceremony, may I now invite Dr. Subba Pavuluri, President SIA India, for the welcome address. Let's put our hands together to welcome sir.
Namaskar everybody. Very good morning. Today we entered into the third day of the seminar, the final day. Even today, third day, I find a lot of enthusiasm about and participation and discussion. The last 2 days, the discussion that we had it so well received. And a lot of new points have come out during the discussions, and we're compiling all of them, and we represent the government also appropriately on that. So, distinguished audience, distinguished people on the dais, welcome you all. Thank you. See, the great endeavors, that there is the Veda Vakya, what says, great endeavors are accomplished through effort, not merely by aspiration. So that means aspiration, we set the goals, then also a lot of effort is to be done. Now, the third day, first day we had the vision related discussion that we had it, and the second day we had something how to achieve it. Today we're discussing more on the practicality of the achievement of that part. Lieutenant General D.S. Rana ji, PVSM Commander-in-Chief, Strategic Forces Command, and Lieutenant General Pannu ji. And we have senior advisor Arvinder Singh Bahal. In fact, Arvind Singh Bahal, in fact, especially flew, he's an astronaut, especially flew from Boston to today's seminar to address all of you and to bring in his knowledge about the space as related. See, you must have heard that our first astronaut from Indian side, when he went to the space, he said, Sara Jaha Sacha, Bharat is the best into that. Similarly, I'm sure that he has many more things to give it to us. Yeah. So we look forward to hear you, sir. how India looks from the Viswam, from space. Thank you, sir. Yeah. And we have Mr. Vinayak Godse, Chief Executive Officer, Data Security Council of India, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. We would like to hear more from our distinguished panelists here on the dais. And maybe subsequently, a lot of things are happening between, track 1, track 2, track 3 sessions. We would like to listen more and more on that. We welcome you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for those warm words of welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the privilege of welcoming a true pioneer of human spirit and exploration. He's a man who has shown the world that dreams have no age limit. At 80 years young, he soared beyond the Kármán line aboard the Blue Origin's NS-34 mission, becoming one of the oldest astronauts to witness the Earth from space. His journey is not just about crossing boundaries of science, but about inspiring generations to believe that curiosity and courage can take you anywhere, even to the stars. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm round of applause and welcoming as we invite astronaut, visionary, and an inspiration, Mr. Arvind Bahal, for the Astronaut Talk.
Well, I'm not a speaker, but I'll tell you what my experience has been. I went to the United States in 1975, but I'm a very proud Indian. I come here every so often, and I just want to say, if you have a passion for anything, you can achieve it. I was very fortunate. I had made reservations on a company called Virgin Galactic, and I had my number with them to go up, but it didn't happen. And I kept pursuing, and then Blue Origin came up, and I took that opportunity. As I said, if you dream and you have a passion, you can achieve anything. Work hard and have a passion and do anything. I started as a cadet in India. In college, I was an NCC cadet, and we used to fly little model airplanes. And I had a glider pilot license in India. I went to America, got a pilot's license. COVID time, I had nothing to do. I got a helicopter license, and then came the space flight. And I travel. I've been to every country in the world, and I wanted to see the whole world at once. No visa required. You see the whole planet all at once. Only thing I can say is space is the next future, and many things that we wear and we do medicine today all came from space research, so it's very important. So just pursue it, and good luck, and thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for those words of inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, in the emerging space ecosystem, cybersecurity and data security are no longer peripheral concerns. They are central to the resilience and reliability of the Indian infrastructure. Satellites, ground stations, command systems, communication networks, payload data, downstream applications, and space-enabled services all depend on a secure digital system. As space becomes increasingly integrated and national security, digital economy, financial systems, communications, logistics, and critical infrastructure, the cyber dimension of space security becomes even more important. Mr. Vinayak Godse, CEO, Data Security Council of India, DSCI, brings deep experience in data protection, cybersecurity, policy, digital trust, and industry collaboration. His perspectives today will help us understand how India can strengthen the cyber resilience of its space ecosystem and build trusted frameworks for the next era of space-enabled services. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Vinayak Godse for the special address.
Anil ji, Dr. Rao, and General Pannu, Mr. Bahal, and General Rana, an entire community which joined in this conference, deliberating 3 days of what is happening in space domain in India and other globe as well, and challenges and opportunity that we'll see from now. Right? So we try to understand this entire domain from largely 3 perspectives. One is the core technology ecosystem and components which goes into the space and what exactly they lead to, what they become, what kind of ambitions they unleash for that matter. Secondly, certainly historically, cybersecurity is an important part and effort that we put together to understand. Until some years back, we largely focus on IT, but we started looking at different domains which is getting shaped by digital and technology and what the meaning of cybersecurity in those domains means. And space is one of the significant domain for us to explore, and thanks to CIA, General Pannu, which inspired us basically to explore this segment and domain from the cybersecurity perspective. And there's a third domain which increasingly we are focusing our attention to, the national security ramification, implication, and also opportunities in this domain basically. Right? So when we talk about security, in fact in digital or IT space, we are saying the world for which we build the security no longer exist, especially with models like Mythos came in last couple of months' time, which changed a lot of consideration and kind of assumption that we build for security, right? We thought like hacking is effort, and there is a effort that you need, there is a skill that you require, there is a time that you probably require, and more importantly, you need to have significant resources to really attack a particular system basically, to really make sure that you create a larger significant ramification out of it basically. And we also realize that our information is distributed, they are so disaggregated. For somebody to find the problem would take a time. But we realize in last 2 months of time is something that AI capability trajectory way it is evolving, that capability is now bringing those contexts together which we never thought about. Very long range context correlation that we talk about, right? For example, 27 years, this open source operating system of Linux for that matter was there. A lot of people tried to find the problem in that, but they couldn't, but model found it. Because model has this incredible capability of connecting long range context together, because it works at a planetary level. It has trillion parameters model basically, and it tried to understand and try to bring those contexts together and to make sure that you identify those vulnerabilities you never could able to do this basically, and also help you to exploit that in much better, much speeder, much scalable way basically, right? And this changes everything. This changes all the notions and ideas on practices, on technology that we build for cybersecurity. So suddenly the world is changing for us. Suddenly the cybersecurity, which became a kind of a domain of there is a Red Sea domain for that matter, or brownfield that we talk about basically. Suddenly cybersecurity for us is becoming greenfield subject. We are trying to understand the meaning of this new world basically, right? And we believe that this frontier technology, which is paving the way for this AI ecosystem, which is failing the many other technology ecosystem, is coming to that level where big bets are being made. Means with such a big capability, such a big kind of profitability, Google last 2 weeks realized that they probably are falling back from other peers, and they raised suddenly $80 billion investment in just 2 weeks of time basically. So there's a big commitment of $1 trillion which is being put together for AI compete for that matter, right? I mean, somebody like Micron, somebody like HK Hynix never thought that they will become $1 trillion industry basically. So company started in 2021 is now on the verge of becoming $1 trillion company. That's some Anthropic I'm talking about basically, right? Suddenly the big money is available and every technology is coming to that level of frontier capabilities basically, right? We are talking about frontier. So there is a capability that you have and there's a capability that takes you to the next level. So we say this as an edge of current paradigm. So something which is at edge, but there's something which takes you to the next paradigm for that matter. And that is where the most of the games are getting played, and that is also happening in space sector as well. For example, 100 million metric ton, basically getting into space, the big space vehicle that basically Elon Musk is talking about, he can able to do that for that matter, right? And what is required for that matter? They're trying to move the data centers to the space. So data center to space or AI data center to space will certainly solve the problem of energy for that matter. But what is the silicon challenges? Because in space there are a lot of challenges, right? Of a rare event for that matter, the kind of distractions that the silicon would have. Until now there are a lot of problems with respect to what kind of silicon you can take it to the space. That's why it was mostly 150, 100, at the most 60 nanometer chip that could go to the space. But now suddenly we are talking about 20 nanometer, we are talking about 7 nanometer, and currently we will be talking about 3 nanometer chip in the space as well, right? So then how you manage the power, then another equation is power for that matter. The third equation is now coming is how you sum certain ecosystem and the speed at which all this happen basically, right? Suddenly the frontier technology discussion is not only limited to now AI or such kind of things. It's also coming to the space ecosystem, and the kind of a listing happened of SpaceX. It didn't file as a satellite company. It filed as a data company. It filed as AI company for that matter, right? So now until now it was mission, but space is more infrastructure now. Infrastructure that will fuel a lot of possibility in the coming future from the AI compete perspective basically. So the challenges that we have with respect to AI compete with the energy consumption, with water consumption, with all this power supply that is required for that basically, right? So suddenly that may get solved, and there is a significant amount of the investment that's going to happen, and with $2 trillion investment, you can just imagine, just in 1 week's time, he started buying company for 60 billion, 80 billion. You can just imagine kind of big game getting played basically, right? So then when we see entire things is moving there, then what will that means for the technology development with this kind of commitment? That's one important part. What that means to cybersecurity, it's very important part. So now we're talking about different semiconductor hardware they're going into space architecture basically. So what will be mean, and the kind of thing that we'll be doing is different than until now what it was doing basically, right? So a lot of those workloads is going into space, and space will be taking care of that basically. So then we need to also find new blue sea for cybersecurity. We also need to find what it means for that matter to entire resiliency, because at the end of the day, it's very easy for you to plug physically. If there is something going wrong, it's very easy for you to unplug the server, unplug the systems for that matter. So how would you do that at a space level? How do you use agentic system at a space level? What kind of challenge it will create for that matter? And more importantly, with this frontier capability, what kind of issues and problems that will create for national security? And that's the work that we do with the different agencies, especially with Niti Aayog. We try to understand the technology ramification to national security basically. So with this kind of capability going to space, what that means to the defense, what that means to the kind of adversarial advantage that somebody will get basically, right? So all of this requires quite a good intense deliberations, and we would, with learning which is coming from this kind of interaction, if we are using this learning to get better in terms of understanding the meaning of cybersecurity, national security, and also understanding the future of tech for that matter. What is going to happen, what is happening right now is very important, but what will happen from 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line is very important basically, right? In fact, we until now missed our attention to what would happen to the next. And that's why we always struggle with catching up the new technology game basically, right? So that's the effort we are putting together, and we are really thankful and privileged to be part of this kind of interaction, and really thankful SIA for getting us into this discussion. And we would like to take this discussion to our cybersecurity community, digital technology experts, and more importantly, the AI experts as well, and other semiconductor ecosystem experts as well. With this, I would like to conclude and look forward to very more meaningful discussions in the day today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Godse, for your insightful address and for emphasizing the importance of cybersecurity, data protection, and the digital trust in strengthening India's space security architecture. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, retired PVSM, AVSM, VSM, former Deputy Chief IDS Operations, and also the Senior Advisor of SIA-India, has had a distinguished career in the armed forces and has contributed extensively to strategic planning, joint operations, defense modernization, and the integration of emerging technologies into national security frameworks. His experiences offer a valuable perspective on how space capabilities are becoming essential to the modern military operations, command and control, secure communications, intelligence surveillance, reconnaissance, and navigation and decision-making. Lieutenant Pannu's address will help frame the importance of civil-military collaboration, defense-space integration, and also the strategic autonomy in the next phase of India's space journey. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Lieutenant General PJS Pannu for this special address.
Jai Hind, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I take this pleasure of speaking at the 5th India Space Congress by the SIA. I take great pleasure in inviting on stage to SIA today Lieutenant General Rana. He is the head of the strategic forces of our country. Vinayak Godse, of course, gives us huge amount of perspective and cooperation and collaboration in how the space ecosystem should be protected through a cyber shield. And we have 80-year-old young Arvinder Bahal, having crossed the common line, and he's also very recently done a wing walk. I do not know what it means, but I'm sure wing walk must be very exciting. It's like walking without much hesitation in a very, very risky environment. It's always good to see at SIA and India Space Congress colleagues from the space ecosystem, international industry for collaborating with India, members from government, armed forces, and academicians. I congratulate Dr. Rao, Anil Prakash, board members of SIA, and the staff of SIA on completing 5 years of SIA and 5th India Space Congress. I think it's a job extremely well done. Dr. Rao, in his address, after looking at Arvinder Bahal, he broke out in this couplet, Sare Jahan se Acha, Hindustan Hamara, because that is what Rakesh Sharma was asked by Indira Gandhi, कि आपको हिंदुस्तान कैसा दिखाई देता है ऊपर से. So to that I will add, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, बरसों से रहा दुश्मन ये जहां हमारा, सारे जहां से अच्छा हिंदुस्तान हमारा. Since we are at it, we have got the university which is called Aryabhatta Knowledge University from Patna participating in this. So, going on to that, when you talk about India, there was a movie called Purav of Paschim, which looked at the West as something which has picked up something from the East. And in that they said, जब zero दिया मेरे भारत ने, तब दुनिया को गिनती आई, तारों की भाषा भारत ने दुनिया को है सिखलाई। देता ना दशमलव भारत तो चांद पे जाना मुश्किल था, धरती और चांद की दूरी का अनुमान लगाना मुश्किल था। So this is where we are, and India Space Congress is a sabhyata, and sabhyata can only prosper if we have an ecosystem which comes in together. So let's do a little bit of measurement of how India Space Congress began in 2021. 2021, the whole world was suffering from COVID. We were actually at zero, shunya. World thought that we are fighting biological warfare. It may be true. It may have been experimented. After all, certain things came out of the biological labs which were meant for biological warfare. But over a period of time, you realize that between then and now, that is 5 years, a lot has changed. We had some 5,000 satellites in the orbit at that time. Today we have 15,000 satellites plus. However, the share of satellites in the global share, we had at that time 2%, and we have come down to 0.5%, because what has happened is, because of reusable rocket launching, the cost has gone down, and therefore the number of constellations which are being thrown up by one single space company tells us about what the privatization can do. And it is privatization not only for the purposes of private or civil sector, but also it is dual use, because space is dual use. It is not about how many satellites you're launching. What has changed is now the global community is competing to dominate the applications, economics, security, architecture, and governance of space. At that time, the global economy was approximately 370 billion. Now it is looking at over 600 billion. But Indian share has risen from 8 million to almost double digit now. And we are looking at, by 2033, we might be touching 44 million. But the launch rates have also gone up. There's reusable technology which has come in. There is human space flights programs which are on the increase. Many countries are into military space building of organizations and applications. There are countries who have declared space as a war-fighting domain, and therefore, from the civilian application of space to dual-use application, largely today, we find that space is being used for military applications for progressing operations, military operations on ground. About a decade back, we used to talk about we are not going to see conventional wars again. A decade back, we used to also talk about we will have short, intense, high-tech operations. But what has happened over a period of time, the investment at that time went into fighting global war on terrorism. And slowly it came down to hybrid operations, gray zone operations, and ultimately you saw the technology throwing in non-kinetic, non-contact applications, but autonomously controlled, and the drones came in a big way. Drones not only controlled from the terrestrial, but now began to be connected to the non-terrestrial. The missiles for deep and precision strikes have been the new order of the day. So ultimately what happened about 4 years back when Russia and Ukraine went to war, all the assessments went wrong. The assessments of the global community went wrong, the assessments of the Russians went wrong, the assessments of the Ukraine went wrong, and a lot of technology continued to evolve during the operations. It was actually now in this era the first industrial scale conventional operations which changed rapidly at geographical proportions and geometrical proportions and went into a very different geography of application. So today you have conflicts, not only in Ukraine, Russia, they went into the Middle East, the Hamas-Israel conflict expanding towards Hezbollah. And then in between, we had Op Sindoor, and then came down to Iran, Israel, Hezbollah, Middle East, and America, all over pushing its agenda from the trade to territory to the tariff warfare. It's a combination of all that. While at the same time, India progressed from Chandrayaan-3 to Aditya to multiple commercial launches, and huge amount of growth happened in the privatization sector. Coming was the in-space, I think, which brought in huge amount of ecosystem for privatization of the Indian industry. Because after all, if we have to stand on our own feet, we have to go in creating a new policy, which we got in 2023. When you look at the Indian space policy and read through it, while today is a day that we are going to be talking about military applications in space, but you read the policy of 2023, it talks about civilian application, and I think the military aspect of it is not yet put into a policy. The next thing is that you realize, as Mr. Godse is talking about, that space, which was considered or is considered as the fourth frontier, the fifth frontier added on to it, which is the cyber. And then we realized a couple of years back that space cannot do it alone. Space is extremely expensive. Investments are very high, and you cannot afford a failure. And you have to make sure that the cyber security is actually part and parcel of building the infrastructure to launching, to maintaining and sustaining. And therefore, Cyber Shield became an essence of the space industry. Today, we have come to a point that cyber and space are now closing on to becoming one domain. They are not separate domains. So, SIA decided to sign an MOU with DSCI. We also have an MOU with Certain. With SIA and Certain put together, we have actually put down a document together which talks about the cyber framework, cybersecurity framework for the space industry. And I think today we have Certain coming in very closely, and they are looking at even artificial intelligence, which is going to aid into finding the gaps in our systems. Today, we have almost 250 startups. But when SIA started its journey, we had almost 20 startups. So if SIA, as an association of the industry from 20 is now looking at 250, obviously look at the scope and the speed at which the SIA has to expand and look at. The startup ecosystem for space is not the same as startup of any other technology or any day. So it's a space startup cannot be compared with any other startup. Because space startup is it requires high specialized skills, testing facilities, clean rooms, launch infrastructure, regulatory approvals, safety certifications, spectrum allocation, orbital coordination, and sustained capital. You require none of this in a conventional startup, even though it is high technology. So the Space Association, along with our partners, which are from the cyber field or the AI or academia, all put together, we have to make sure that we create this ecosystem to help out our space industry to survive at the nascent stage, even including startups. Because the gestation period is long, there are huge amount of entry barriers, and any failure of any space infrastructure or even a company which is trying out something, the failure can be national in nature because everybody is looking at it. We need test ranges, we need simulation facilities, we need access to infrastructure, which is possibly government infrastructure, and long-term funding, as I said. Very recently, we've had 2 failures of PSLV. We've lost about 8 Indian satellites which could not actually be deployed, which is a huge loss. Why this failure happened, possibly between the cyber and the space industry, we can put our heads together and see what should be the best practices that we do not face such national losses. Yesterday, we had a discussion, and Dr. Hegde was talking about the role of universities. I think universities have a huge role in contributing to the space ecosystem skilling of it. But I think he brought a very pertinent point, that the universities should not think making of a satellite and launching of a satellite is the pinnacle of your achievements. And how he brought out the system of the universities launching is that they are not part of the national ecosystem. If the universities become part of the national ecosystem, if the in-space put together, if there is any orbital coordination or spectrum requirement which is to be done, then I think at national level we also must find good utility of these satellites being made by the students and launched. The space policy also has encouraged the states to have their own state space policies. Each state, we discussed yesterday, has space application centers. And if you got to look at the capacity and the capability that we need to build, I think on one side there is a need. And on the other side, there is a requirement of filling the gap of what is required. So space application centers put together looking at the Earth for remote sensing requirements itself must be throwing up the requirements for the remote sensing in the nation. At the end of it, it is the organizations such as SIA who can help aggregate these requirements put together and collectively give it to the government or give it to our space industrial ecosystem to develop what is required, because every state, though has an application center, but every state cannot have a satellite of its own. Similarly, in the government, there are various departments in the government. You have agricultural, fisheries, animal husbandry on one side. You have the defense on the other side. You have railways. You have far too many ministries. Agriculture ministry is looking at the, remote sensing from where, a lot of data can be shared for the farmers. For disaster management, you require space effort. But the point here is that no ministry or department can have their own satellite. You can't have a railway satellite, you can't have a defense satellite, you can't have an agricultural satellite. Like I said, every state cannot have. So all that needs to be aggregated as a national effort. The next point is that when we are looking at space ecosystem in a nation, I think gone are the days where you can have budget-fed enterprises. That, ministry must release the budget and only then we can progress. I think we have moved away from there, and that era has ended and we've gone into the era of equity. You have to go in for a global trade, earn money out of it. In fact, from equity, you will be able to get better research and development allocations. And therefore, I think that needs to be coordinated, and I think in SIA, one can discuss, decide, and even, harmonize such efforts. Every company or industry that is into business is given this social responsibility, that corporate social responsibility for giving every year something or the other for socio-economic development. I think we can also look at, since I stand for the defense, is that you could also consider introducing corporate national security responsibility. 1 year you give for the CSR, the next year you give it to the CNSR. So at the end of it, what will happen is that both responsibilities, because at the end of it, you can grow socially and you can grow economically, but if you're not secure enough, then why are you growing? Because you will be demolished sooner or later. And you've seen how devastating wars are. The next thing is that when you're talking about making of satellites or making of infrastructure, I think we are moving away from the traditional systems to software-defined, smart systems, data centers possibly in the space. the interlinking of satellites, digital communications, quantum QKD and quantum communication. No better person than Vinayak to talk about how quantum can be introduced in space communication. I know, I mean, many times I've said that this theory is elusive, but I think sci-fi and research put together, I think, will make it possible. Because after all, if Chinese have launched a ambitious satellite, they must have thought of something, and they have done it in 2016. We need to understand that if LEO is going to be choked, say, you know, circumference of the Earth is about 40,000 kilometers. If you add, say, 10,000 more, it becomes 50,000 kilometers. On the low Earth orbit, if you're going to pump in 50,000 satellites, then the gap is only 1 kilometer. If, technically speaking, you're on one orbit. So if you're going to add another 50,000 and yet another 50,000, you see how the ITU is looking at giving permissions and where are we going to go. Ultimately now, in DEFSAT, which is going to be the 5th DEFSAT now, we've published a report of the last DEFSAT. It is not a report, actually. It is a full stack of information which has come in. And ultimately, in DEFSAT, we will have the space war games and simulation. And in simulation, we are looking at persistent ISR, in which we will have UDA versus UDA decision metrics. Whoever can see first, decide first, can act first, will be able to survive. And at the end of it, I think it is the spectrum. If you don't have the spectrum, you won't have the communication. If you don't have the communication, you won't have the command. If you don't have the command, you won't have the control. If you don't have the control, you can't win a war. So today we are going to be discussing all this during our defense discussions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Jai.
Thank you very much indeed, sir, for those valuable words and highlighting the growing role of space in modern defense operations and also for the national security. Ladies and gentlemen, the Strategic Forces Command occupies a vital place in India's national security architecture. In an era where technology determines communication, resilience, surveillance, and secure command systems are increasingly interconnected, space-based capabilities are now integral to strategic awareness, secure communications, and also for navigation support and early warning. Ladies and gentlemen, today it's a great honor to have amongst us Lieutenant General D.S. Rana, PVSM Commander-in-Chief from the Indian Army. General Rana's address will bring an important strategic perspective on India's security priorities, the role of space in national defense, and the need to strengthen the sovereign capabilities for the future. So let's put our hands together as I invite Lieutenant General D.S. Rana for the special address.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege for me to address this gathering on the topic on strategic autonomy in space. As mentioned in strategic forces, we are using a lot of space applications all across the world. The strategic forces have got a major stake in the space other than other redundancies which are built in other spheres as well. In my previous appointment, when I was heading the Defense Intelligence Agency, I have dealt with this topic of space and monitoring the space of development across the world, and also give recommendations accordingly. And I had some chance to participate in many Indian space symposiums in the last 3 years, 2-3 years. So with that credentials, I will be bringing out certain points which are not only related to defense, but other aspects of space as well. We would all agree that space is no longer a distant frontier, as brought out, and not only reserved for few actors. It is a theater in which economies prosper, military operate, and diplomacy is projected. When we talk about strategic context, space now underpins the full spectrum of national hard power if we talk about communication, positioning, intelligence, targeting, and command and control. Fusion of cyberspace and outer space, as has been brought out earlier, has created a single contested domain where jamming, snooping, and cyber attacks can cascade into terrestrial crisis. The pace of global space activity is unprecedented. Over 4,000 operational satellites were added in 2025 alone. Massive LEO constellation and few sensing modalities are changing the very character of competition. Now, from reality, I will name 3 operational imperatives that must guide our policies and all programs in the future. The first is the resilience through redundant constellations, rapid deployment and distributed launch capacities, including launch on demand. Second is augmented awareness, which we called about space situational awareness, in our context, more importantly, space domain awareness, driven by optical SAR, including advanced sensors like MASENT, fusion and persistent IR satellites. Some of these capabilities we don't have still. And the seamless integration of commercial defense interoperability as also institutional mechanism that translates civilian innovation into defense capabilities. Now, if we talk about technology, which are trends which are shaping the doctrine, we are witnessing a convergence of technologies that changes how we design, deploy, and defend space systems, wherein layered multi-orbit architecture like the LEO, MEO, and GEO constellation deliver low latency, regional resilience, and polar reach. Integrated high-throughput satellite grids with high-speed inter-satellite relays are shortening the OODA loop. Eutelsat OneWeb style hybrid, which is based on 900 satellites of LEO, and which are paired with 31 GEO satellites, are emerging as an operational template. The technology trends are reshaping the space domain at breakneck speed, wherein free space optical communication is, which supports terabyte class of transfer in very less time. Onboard edge processing and AI clubbed and miniaturization and advanced processors are enabling satellites to fuse SAR, IR, and hyperspectral data in orbit, thereby reducing latency and bandwidth demands on ground segments. Small satellites, including CubeSat, very low Earth orbit, and HAPS in emerging near space segment, provide low cost redundancy. It is encouraging that India is at the threshold of launching a full scale HAPS capable of flying up to 90 days at 75,000 feet, bridging persistent coverage between air and space. The initiative of startup in manufacturing and launching innovations are culminating in national capabilities, including 3D printing, modular buses, reusable launchers, and indigenous micro launchers, and are enabling launch on demand and rapid replenishment of surge requirements. Massive innovation drives, sensor improvement and RF geolocation are underway. Now we have commercial clusters like the Hawkeye 360 and now our upcoming Samoa constellation, which are able to geolocate the RF emissions. Also persistent SBIR-like architecture are reshaping missile warning and tactical awareness. When we look closer at the regional threat environment, do a scan around us, then we see that our neighborhood is rapidly militarizing space capabilities. China has designated space as a military domain and is building up space power at an unprecedented scale with 92 launches in 2025 and 140 planned in 2026. We all know that China already has a EO, SAR, and ILINT satellite architecture and Beidou enhancement through geodetic integration with stations which they have put in our immediate neighborhood, including Pakistan, which has sharpened positioning up to 15 centimeters across South Asia. We also have witnessed how Iran has been using the Beidou for its missile in the recent conflict. The China-Pakistan space nexus has moved from cooperation to architecture. Pakistan launched 6 Earth observation satellites on Chinese Long March booster between just in a 16 months period, with payload featuring onboard AI and hyperspectral imaging. China's co-orbital inspector satellite, Shillong, which you are aware of, directed energy weapons, microwaves, cyber operations, and sophisticated maneuvers are raising the threat to space-based assets in the region. Maneuvers by Chinese satellites with increased dwell time over our territory as observed during Operation Sindoor, underscores the urgency of persistent awareness and rapid response. If we see India's current trajectory, then India is already moving decisively across institutions, industry, and defense. As part of policy and institution-driven initiatives like InSpace and NSIL have facilitated opening the sector to private enterprises. The Indian Space Policy of 2026 and Indian Space Vision of 2047 provided strategic direction, and the liberalized FDI regime permits up to 100% foreign direct investment in all space infrastructure. ISRO is further evolving and enabling micro and nano constellations and optical inter-satellite links. Its reusable launch vehicle demonstrator and PSLV missions with clusters of small satellite are concrete milestones. While the highly awaited SBS-3 program will deploy 52 dedicated defense satellites by 2030, which includes 31 satellites by private players, Project Samoa as a successor to Kautilya will add feather to the cap of country's space advancement. Startups and industrial innovation are gathering steam, wherein indigenous firms are delivering disruptive capabilities, including hyperspectral satellites, which is in progress. Startups and commercial ventures are also building optical ground stations and laser terminals. These elements create a foundation of strategic autonomy, but momentum must be converted into durable capabilities. If we look at India's structural gaps and priority actions, then to realize the next era of space, we must urgently close 5 interdependent gaps. Firstly, we must strengthen our supply chain sovereignty. Presently, space-based semiconductors, radiation-hardened electronics, and advanced components remain import-dependent. Investments in fabs, test facilities, and incentives for domestic production of critical subsystems is essential to achieve strategic autonomy in the field of space technology. Compared to China's 5 launch ports, India's near total dependence on Sriharikota constrained search launches. We must develop additional space ports, range safety infrastructure, logistics to enable launch on demand and crisis search. Dedicated military space infrastructure is important to sustain future military conflicts. Decades of peaceful focus has left gaps in space-based electronic warfare and counter-space capabilities. We must build a resilient space-grade SATCOM, electronic warfare, and counter-space system. I observed major initiatives by defense space agencies during a recent visit there, and I feel enhancing the capability of Defense Space Agency and its endeavor of Space Force enhancement, that is space for defense, and defense of space, that is space control, capabilities will make a significant impact in enhancing military space capabilities. It is important to facilitate investment in indigenous space sensors, that is optical, radar, and RF, creation of national data fusion centers, and formalizing information sharing agreements with like-minded partners. All these priorities must be pursued in parallel. Supply chain investments without launch capacity will bottleneck deployment. Regulatory reforms without defense integration will leave critical gaps. Space domain awareness without diplomatic partnership will limit strategic reach. Institutional clarity and industrial partnership are equally essential. There should be a defined, clear role wherein ISRO should concentrate on advanced R&D and national missions. Through space diplomacy, India should synergize technology and capabilities with friendly nations. We can offer norm setting for responsible behavior. We can capacity sharing to friendly countries on our terms and lead to norm setting for responsible behavior. During my visit earlier as a head of Defense Intelligence Agency, whenever I visited many of these countries in our immediate neighborhood, including Tanzania, Vietnam, Greece as well, and other global south and important immediate neighborhood countries, there was great demand for our access capacities as goodwill and for commercial service. and which would create reciprocal security arrangement and expand our influence, and which we could facilitate in some of these countries. To conclude, I would reiterate the superiority in space will belong to those who master resilience, awareness, and integration. We have the talent, the institutions, and the entrepreneurial energy. Let us marshal them and with clarity of purpose, secure our supply chains, expand launch capacities, legislate, certainly harden our systems, and bind industry to national missions. If we do all this, India will not only participate in the next era of space, but it will also help us to define it. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir, for your thoughtful, insightful, and forward-looking address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move ahead with another important segment of the opening ceremony. First, we will have the launch of the cover page of SIA-ATL Chair at Clause publication. To do the honors, I would also like to invite on stage General Dushyanth Singh, DG Clause. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the book, Mapping the Future of Defense Communications Satellite Connectivity, co-authored by Lieutenant General P.J.S. Pannu and Colonel Harinderjeet Singh. Colonel Singh, if you are here, may I request you to kindly join us on the stage. This is by Anand Technologies and SIA-India. So let's put our hands together for the launch of the cover page of SIA-ATL Chair at Clause Publications. Thank you, dignitaries. Next, we have the release of India Space Investment Outlook 2026, Assessing Investment Readiness and Market Potential, which is a publication by SIA-India and Deloitte. Along with our dignitaries from Deloitte, I would like to invite Mr. Sriram Ananthasainam, Partner and Leader, Space Digital, Government Deloitte. I invite Mr. Chirag Agarwal, Partner and Offering Portfolio Leader, Corporate Finance, Deloitte India, and Mr. Vikash Kabra, Partner, Merger and Acquisitions, Corporate Finance, Deloitte India, to kindly join the dignitaries on the stage, please. Once again, a round of applause for this very important release by SIA-India and Deloitte. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the release of SIA and MERI report compendium release and ISC 2026 publication repository launch. I would also like to invite Professor Lalit Agarwal from MERI to kindly join us on the stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for the release of SIA-MERI report compendium and release of ISC 2026 publication repository launch. Thank you, dignitaries. And now to formally conclude the Day 3 opening ceremony proceedings, may I invite Mr. Anil Prakash, Director General SIA India, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good morning. We were not expecting that third day. Dr. Subba was asking, would be their house full? Then I said, let's see. It should be. What if? And thanks to this, you see, sir, we have a full house, and I think that is the charisma of not any individual or anything, and this is a charisma of space. With space dominates, I think things starts and things is not going to end. I'm really thankful to General Rana for his very precious time, sir, you have given us, and also you have also given us a lot of tasks where the industry would like to come forward and work with closely with DSA and on the future development of the satellite and all these various sensor payloads. So we promise, sir, we will work diligently with you and the respective departments on that direction. What a it's a really honor for us to have Astronaut Arvinder Bahalji here, and I think this was, this is our fortune to have him here today, and it's not only inspired youngster, but I think it's also inspired people who are above 70. So they look young, and I think you must get a tip from once you in the tea break. Sir, tusi ki khande ho, ki pinde ho. So I think that's I think we must get a take, and it's such a young person that it's really inspires everybody. Thank you, sir, for you being here. So Naik Saab, to Naik hai, matlab he is also Naik in terms of leading us on that next era of evolution, where artificial intelligence, cybersecurity is important, quantum computing. So I think we have a MOU, a strategic MOU with them, and we will be working diligently for SIA-India, how space sector could be benefited and could pay a roadmap to the industry to work on cybersecurity, computing, and artificial intelligence. Our senior advisor, General Pannu, is a lighting and beacon, and he's guiding us on all respect in terms of our orientation toward very strategic on defense perspective. I think this is we honor to have him on our board to serve. Thank you, General Pannu, and our not less than our honorable President, Dr. Subba Pavuluri, and I think he is closely matching Arvinder Bahalji on his seat, because he is a constant endeavor for meditation and yoga and keep him fit. And I think I'm not going to match his, because he wake up around 4 o'clock in the morning. I think he's also slightly working along with our Prime Minister Modi, 18 hours day shift. So, he has wearing multiple hats. He is Chairman and Managing Director of Honor Technology, President of SIA, and more recently he has taken on his shoulder a Chancellor of a Vinayak University. Let's give a big round of applause. So today dates, I think this is going to be very, back to back, and there will be a series of defense sessions, and there is a special session. There is also we have a US-India cooperation session. So we'll keep you busy, and thank you very much for your patience and being present. And of course, we look forward to our President last evening in the closing. He said, we must look forward to you. We will be sharing a questionnaire shortly with each one of participants. So please tell us, what is your ask from the government? What exactly you are looking forward? So we'll compile that, and we will definitely like to reach out to the government for their things. And yesterday morning, the chairman of this space, Dr. Goenka, was here, and I think this is something most of the ask has been addressed or going to be addressed through different agencies. So with that note, thank you very much. You're here, and we'll break for a tea, and then after we'll assemble with a different track. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And may I request our dignitaries to kindly come together for a group photograph, please. And ladies and gentlemen, with that we close the proceedings of Day 3 opening ceremony. Looking forward to seeing you in the parallel sessions, followed by tea from 11:30 onwards. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, this very stage will conduct track 1. The adjacent stage, which is Sovereign 1 hall, will have track 2, and the whole allure as you move out on the left-hand side.